Hello beautiful, welcome back to Nat's Beautiful Life. Today Barry and I will be sharing with you my June wrap up. He is looking out the window because he was making sure no squirrels get in our yard and try to come and kill us. So thank you, Barry. This is Barry Allen. He is a Dalmatian mix. I have a Chihuahua around here somewhere, and I am me. If you're new to this channel, my name is Natasha. I do videos on mostly books, but also beauty and bullet journaling, and I'm so glad you joined me today. I'm going to be going kind of in reverse order here, and I'm going to start with the book that I didn't finish, but you'll find out why. I am finishing it. I've been working on it for a couple months, but it's because it's a short story collection. But anyway, it's fun to kind of read a couple stories, put back on the shelf, read a couple stories, put back on the shelf. But yeah, so I finished 8 books, and of course with this one it's 9. So let's talk about that one. The first one is How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. If you've not read any N.K. Jemisin, I do recommend starting with this one. She has great trilogies and everything. Like, she's one of the first, she is the first and the only author to win 3 consecutive Hugo Awards for the same series. So all of like her first, second, third book in the series won the Hugo Award. But this is a group of short stories. She writes mostly sci-fi and fantasy, but she also does magical realism, things like that. And her writing is so captivating and so rich. Just her imagination and things she comes up with is so awesome. So it's jarring sometimes to be in this really immersive world and then it's done and then you go into another one. So that's why I say read this, take your time, because you're going to be reading it and then you're going to have to put it down and go into a world for a while, come back out and then pick it up again. But I will probably finish it July or August, depending on how reading goes. I say that because the reading rush is this month, so that's a lot of reading. Alright, but I do recommend that. Very, very good. Alright, next book, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, by Mary. This is a book that I'm sure you've all heard about by now. Twins that are very light-skinned African Americans that run away from home. One comes back many years later. Yeah, many years later. The other one, no one's seen or heard from since she left, or since whatever. If you read the book, you know what I'm saying. And she has actually started, they're so light-skinned that she passes as white. She's married a white man. She has a child who thankfully for her was light-skinned as well. Her fear was that the child would actually be black and then she'd have to do a lot of explaining. But the child was born white. And then the other sister had come back to the town with a child who was very dark, and they kind of the sisters kind of get put back together through the children, but there's a lot that goes on. I think an important part of this that no one talks about is the town itself. The town is a town of light-skinned black people, and they do that on purpose. They basically have been trying to breed the black out of their community, even though they're still African American. And this takes place in the 50s, so, well, it starts off in the 50s and then moves along. But I'm saying it's an interesting story. There's so many facets to it, and like, I didn't even rate this because it's definitely literary fiction. It ended so abruptly to me that I was just like, huh? You know, it was like I wanted a little bit more resolution, but I guess that's kind of the point of life in general, because it's not just about race, it's about everything, and life just keeps going, and everybody has their secrets, and everybody does whatever they can to survive and all of that stuff, and just letting people be who they are and blah blah blah. But there's so much in this book, and I think that's why it has just kind of taken people by storm. But I will say, the writing, Britt Bennett, amazing writer, and so I'd be interested to see what else she writes as well, because the writing is so amazing, and it just, everything in it will make you think, and just yeah, that's good. All right. So 2 books that I read this month that blew me away and made me feel things and just, one is Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, and the second is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. So, if you don't know, this is a dystopian. I didn't realize that until later. Is there a bookmark? Oh yeah, Ryan's reading this, but. So, in this world, it is in the future. America has gone through a Second World War, but, no, Second World War, a Second Civil War, and, yeah, it has basically enslaved women, and, oh, this book, it is basically if the American government, or, in this book, Canada's Canada, California's kind of its own thing, Texas is its own thing, and then it looks like it's part of the Eastern Seaboard has become the Republic of Gilead, which is basically if a cult made a government, like a religious cult, that takes scripture and then also makes up its own scripture to go with it and just brainwashes everybody. But of course the people in just trust me, this book is mind-blowing. And then you get to this one. So this one's following one of the handmaids. So a handmaid is, in this world, the environment that we all live in has been trashed. The poison is within us. So many people are infertile, men are sterile. And so if you can have children at all, you are kind of made, like you're put up on a pedestal, but not really. So you're made to be a handmaid. So what that is you go to your post for about 2 years before they move you around, and you're there with a husband and a wife, and if you get pregnant by that husband, and there's a whole ceremony involved, then your child is the wife's, and you are basically breeding stock, and it is revolting. So well done. And so you're following A Handmaid's Tale. This one, you're following 3 people. You're following one of the aunts, which are they're in charge of the women, and basically they're the people who train the handmaids to be handmaids, like teach them how to be good handmaids, and they're also the ones who teach the wives how to be good wives and everything else. They run the schools, they handle the women. So following one of them, it's following someone who was born in Canada and is free, we'll just put it that way. And then it's following someone who lives in an upper society home of a commander in Gilead, and how everything works together. This series, or this duology, yeah, I'm just gonna tell you that it's scary because I can actually see it happening. I'm not even kidding. Alright, so then we'll move to the book club book of the month, which was actually a long way to A Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is the 3rd book I'm holding up because I have lent out the 1st book and I don't own the 2nd one, but somehow I own the 3rd one. So this is a comedy space opera, and it truly is about the journey. There's no like big event that you need to look forward to. It truly is about the journey. And I guess that is kind of our only gripe. One of the things that we talked about in the book club discussion was there are so many things that happen. I mean, there's literally one thing after the other. So if it's a wild ride, there's no lulls in the book at all. So if you like a fast-paced kind of a thing, then check it out. Very diverse. And when I say that, I mean it's even like she's got other species in there. It's something. But we were talking about how she had the opportunity with so many different things that happen along the way to really expand on those things, yeah, and have, you know, deeper things happen amongst those specific things. But again, so many things happen, and so you're just kind of left with like, what? You're just like, okay, well, I read that book, but it was enjoyable, but it was like, there just wasn't enough. And from reading like I'm picking this book up, it's not the right one, but from reading like introductions and acknowledgments and things like that, it looks like she may have written a huge book and then they made her chop it down. So it's possible that she actually did expound on those things more, and you know, we got chopped off. And I think these other books are not, it's not like a continuation of story. It's like they're companion novels. So it's about this group, and this one's about this group. So maybe they get expounded upon more. I will at least read this one and let you know. So those are those books. All right, so now we're gonna move into classics. I read Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. I also read there's 3 short stories in here as well. There's one called A Christmas Memory that I did really like, but Breakfast at Tiffany's, I would say I was a little disappointed. I got the whole thing with Holly Golightly, like why it's called Breakfast at Tiffany's and all of that. You're not even really following her, you're following her neighbor, but she's not a very likable person in this book. I don't know how it is in the movie. I really should probably watch the movie just to compare, but she's not very likable in this book. But yeah, so I read that and was a little disappointed, but I'm glad I read it. It's interesting. I'm not saying don't read it, but I'm just saying don't expect to be like dressing up like Holly Golightly for Halloween based on this book. Alright, moving on to a surprise for me, and I mentioned this recently in my book freakout tag. Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braden. This book is, I think from 1860s. It's one of the very first books that are in the genre of what they call sensation novels. So it's a mystery, it's a thriller, it's got so much going on in it, and it is so good. My only gripe with it is that our author is very descriptive. Very descriptive. And at the very beginning of the book, when she's descriptive, it's helpful and it makes sense. But as we go on, it's like, okay, get to the action. Stop describing everything else. But so good. So you've got Lady Audley, who the nephew of the Mr. Audley, his nephew, is like, something's off, and I just broke a nail. And it turns out this woman is not who she claims to be. There's abandonment. She's murdered. She's changed her identity several times. She's something, and it's basically about him finding all these things out, getting proof of them, and then there's a big twist at the end. But I highly recommend that. Even if you don't really particularly like classics, I think you would like this, because it's a lot going on. All right, I read Jane Eyre for the first time. Can you believe it? And I really enjoyed it. It was not what I thought. I did not like Mr. What was his name? Why can't I remember his name? Rochester. I didn't like Mr. Rochester. He was weird. I didn't like him. But I like Jane. That's all I have to say. I think if I looked at specific things within the book, I think I could rip them apart. As far as like who I like and who I don't, but this is just a wrap up, not a dissertation. I did enjoy this book. I do recommend it. It was one that I was like not putting down. I was like, everybody shut up, I'm reading, because I wanted to know what happened. But the most interesting thing is obviously the woman in the attic. and then how all of that, it's just bizarre, okay? People don't tell you how bizarre Jane Eyre is until you read it and you're like, this is bizarre. No wonder it's like such a cult classic as well as a classic. Like, people still are doing retellings of Jane Eyre and things like that, and I literally, yeah, never mind. I'm just gonna stop with that. I enjoyed it. I don't know if I rated this either. I probably would have given it 5 stars because, I mean, it's wonderfully written, progressive for the time, and yeah, enjoyed it. Alright, so last book, which is actually the first book, and probably other than the Handmaid's Tales and the Testaments, Handmaid's Tale and the Testaments, my favorite book that I read this year, or this month, and probably one of my favorite books I've read this year. And I can't believe, once again, first time I ever read this book, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Again, I was a literature major, and we didn't do any Jane Austen. Yeah, we did other things. We were, like, my focus was more in the British stuff. It was, like, older and, like, Shakespeare type things in Chaucer. And then when I got to American literature, it was, we would do more obscure work. So like F. Scott Fitzgerald, we did Babylon Revisited, and I had to read The Great Gatsby for the first time this year myself, because we did like obscure things or just different things. And so yeah, so a lot of these things that, you know, you think I would have already read, I haven't, and I'm reading them now, and I'm really enjoying them. So Pride and Prejudice was not what I thought it was at all, but I enjoyed it so much. It is so real. One of the biggest prejudices I like to see smashed in real life and also in books is rich versus poor, and it really just does it. Yeah, and then also like someone coming like her, my favorite character, I think one of my new favorite characters of all time is Lizzie Bennet, and I love her so much. Like, I could read Pride and Prejudice right now again. But I mean, I just love how she knew she came from crazy parents, and she had some crazy siblings, but she was just her, and she, you know, her and Jane, they were just themselves, and yeah, it's good time. So if you've not read Pride and Prejudice, I say read it. I had just come off of reading Persuasion by Jane Austen, and the writing, even though it's written later, the writing's very choppy in Persuasion. I did enjoy it, but it did not flow as well as I believe the writing in Pride and Prejudice went. And I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it, and I'm going to stop talking so this video isn't 30 minutes long. Alright, so that's my June wrap up. Again, my standouts are going to be Pride and Prejudice and the Margaret Atwood books. I highly recommend them. If you have any questions about any of these books specifically, let me know in the comments, and let me know what you read in June and what your favorites were. I love to know about that. I love to get recommendations. I think that is it. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll be with you again very soon, sharing with you my Reading Rush TBR. We're almost there already. And then also, I'd like to do maybe a classics recommendations or wrap up or something for this year. So I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day, gorgeous.